April 13th, 2024. Iran fires over 300 drones and ballistic missiles directly at Israel. The world holds its breath. Oil markets spike before dawn, and every trader on Earth looks at the same spot on the map, a narrow strip of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, just 21 miles wide at its tightest point, through which 1/5 of all the oil on the planet must pass every single day. This is not a history lesson. This is happening right now. January 2024. Houthi rebels backed by Tehran begin attacking commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Shipping companies reroute. Insurance premiums explode. The price of moving a single cargo container triples in weeks. And the question that energy ministers across Asia cannot stop asking behind closed doors is the same question that has haunted this region for 40 years. What happens if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz? Because they have threatened to, repeatedly, formally, with military commanders standing at podiums with maps behind them. October 2023. Gaza burns. The wider Middle East begins a slow tilt towards something nobody wants to name out loud. Iran's proxy network activates across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen simultaneously. American aircraft carriers reposition into the Arabian Sea. Israeli jets are on standby. And somewhere beneath the surface of all that noise, oil is still moving. 20 million barrels a day, every day, through 21 miles of politically explosive water. Look at this strait. Really look at it. The northern shore belongs to Iran. The southern shore belongs to Oman and the UAE. There is no alternate universe in which this geography is not a crisis waiting to happen. 2 inbound lanes, 2 outbound lanes, a traffic separation scheme that requires supertankers carrying 2 million barrels each to navigate with less margin than a city highway. And on one side of that corridor sits a nation that has explicitly said, more than once, that it has the capability and the willingness to shut this down. February 2024. The United States Fifth Fleet, headquartered in Bahrain, issues its 14th consecutive maritime security advisory in as many weeks. Iranian fast boats shadow American warships. An American destroyer intercepts a weapons shipment in the Gulf of Oman. The escalation ladder has rungs nobody wants to count. Here is the number that explains why the whole world pays attention. 20 million barrels per day. That is the Hormuz flow on a normal morning. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, Iran itself, all of them funneling crude through the same narrow neck. Add liquefied natural gas, add refined products, add petrochemical feedstocks. This one body of water is the circulatory system of the global industrial economy, and it runs directly through a neighborhood that is, as of right now, on fire. China gets 50% of its Gulf oil through Hormuz. India, Japan, South Korea, the entire Eastern Asian industrial complex depends on ships that have no other road home. When analysts in Beijing wargame a Hormuz closure, the numbers they produce are not comfortable. Weeks of reserve, months before substitution becomes possible, years before any alternative infrastructure could replace what moves through that strait on an average Tuesday. March 2024. Iran seizes a container ship linked to Israel in the Strait of Hormuz. No shots fired, no casualties, but every shipping company in the world updates its risk models overnight. And the insurance market, which prices risk with cold precision, adds a war risk premium to every vessel transiting the Gulf that has not been seen since the tanker war of the 1980s. The 1980s. That is the last time this region actually used oil as a weapon in a sustained, physical, ship-sinking way. Iran and Iraq attacked each other's tankers for years. The United States eventually intervened militarily to keep the strait open. And the lesson that Gulf oil exporters took from that war, the lesson that shaped $1 billion of infrastructure investment over the following 3 decades, was simple and brutal. You cannot afford to have only one way out. so someone built another one. 400 kilometers. That is the distance from Abu Dhabi's inland oil heartland to the coast of the Gulf of Oman, through desert flats that hit 60 degrees Celsius in summer, through the Hajar Mountains where rock is harder than ambition and the terrain does not negotiate, through terrain that has no water, no shade, and no mercy. Someone buried a pipeline through all of it anyway. This is Habshan, deep in Abu Dhabi's interior, where the UAE's oil fields concentrate their output into processing hubs the size of small cities, flare stacks burning orange against white sky, compressors running 24 hours a day, crude gathering from dozens of reservoirs across the western desert, converging here before it decides which direction to flow. Before 2012, it had one direction, north, into the Gulf, through Hormuz, same as everyone else, same vulnerability, same exposure to whatever geopolitical storm happened to be building on the Iranian side of the water. Construction started in 2008, the year oil hit $147 a barrel, the year the global financial system nearly collapsed, the year the Gulf states looked at their single export corridor and decided that strategic dependency on 21 miles of contested water was a national security problem that could no longer be deferred. They did not announce it loudly. They did not hold press conferences about strategic bypass infrastructure. They surveyed the route. They geotechnically assessed 300 kilometers of desert and mountain terrain. They designed pumping stations, block valve systems, emergency shutdown architecture, and SCADA networks on the other side of the country, and then they built it. Steel convoys moved through the desert for months. Trenchers cut the route. Welders worked under desert stars and floodlights with the same intensity they would have used on an offshore platform. X-ray equipment checked every joint. Hydrostatic testing validated every kilometer before it was buried and forgotten. The mountains were harder. The Hajar Range does not yield politely. Rock saws, controlled blasting, anchor systems against seismic movement. Every meter through those ridgelines cost more and took longer than the desert sections, and the desert sections were already a serious engineering commitment. By the time the first crude moved through the full line in June 2012, the UAE had built something that almost no other Gulf state possessed, a functioning, large-scale alternative to Hormuz, 1.5 million barrels a day of capacity, later pushed toward 1.8, not enough to replace the strait entirely, but enough to change the mathematics of a crisis significantly. And now, as of right now, in 2025, with Israeli jets over Lebanon, American carrier groups in the Arabian Sea, Iranian proxies attacking shipping in multiple theaters simultaneously, and diplomatic channels between Washington and Tehran running on the thinnest ice they have been on in years, that buried line is not a legacy infrastructure project. It is active strategic insurance against a threat environment that is more dangerous today than it was at any point since the line was commissioned. This is Fujairah, the UAE's window onto the Gulf of Oman, rocky mountains meeting deep blue water, tank farms stretching along the coastal plain, loading buoys positioned in open sea, far enough offshore to receive supertankers with full drafts, and critically, unambiguously, irreversibly outside the Strait of Hormuz. A tanker loading here does not pass through Iranian territorial waters, does not transit the narrow lanes monitored by Iranian coastal defense systems, does not enter the geographic kill zone that Iranian military doctrine has identified, practiced against, and publicly threatened to activate. It loads in open ocean and turns east toward Asia with nothing between it and its destination except weather and distance. That distinction, invisible on a casual map, is worth tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure and years of engineering difficulty. It's worth it because the alternative, learning the hard way that you needed a bypass after Hormuz is already closed, is the price no government can afford to pay. November 2024, the United States and Iran resume indirect nuclear negotiations that collapse within 2 weeks.
The Iranian Revolutionary Guard conducts live fire exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. Footage of fast boat swarm tactics circulates in military analysis communities. The exercises are described as routine. Nobody believes that framing. January 2024. Israeli strikes on Iranian-backed facilities in Syria continue. Hezbollah and Israel exchange fire across the Lebanese border at intensity levels not seen since 2006. Oil markets add a $4 risk premium that analysts attribute entirely to Hormuz anxiety. Not a single barrel has been disrupted yet. The premium is purely psychological, purely anticipatory, purely about the question of what happens if this keeps escalating. In Fujairah, the loading buoys are still lit. The pumps at Habshan are still running. The barrier
The bypass is framed as one nation's answer to a choke point that still affects the world. Reliability begins not at maximum output, but at controlled equilibrium.
A strategic bypass is only as resilient as its least visible point.
We have a green light on the pipeline flush.
Adjusting the schedule for the loading arm now.
Keep tension on that line. Bring the hose down easy.
All right, it's connected. Start tightening the bolts.
The bypass matters immensely, but it does not replace the strait entirely.
Building the pipeline means building a logistics artery beside it.
The bypass is vital because it is one of very few functioning alternatives at all EIA UAE embassy.
The potential is holding steady at negative 1050.
Noted. Let's check the marker and head to the next bypass valve.
Tanker approaching Fujairah SPB. Confirm clearance for strategic crude loading. Buoys are secure.
Tension coming up. All right, hold it there. Clear the deck.
And it is here, in the open waters of the Gulf, that the strategic advantage becomes clear.
This entire system exists to move one liquid continuously, safely, and profitably. This entire system exists to move one liquid continuously, safely, and profitably.
All right, team, visibility is improving. Let's move the first vessel in the queue.
Confirmed. Updating the ETA now.
The bypass route is only complete when marine logistics and pipeline logistics work as one.
What begat as strategic foresight has matured into critical infrastructure UAE embassy. Hold her steady now.
All right, I'm on the ladder. Heave away.
Pilot secure on deck.
Reroute the M30 to the bypass now.
Confirmed. Eastbound flow increasing.
We need new loading windows for the Marhaba terminal within 5 minutes.
Tug 15, proceed to Alpha 12.
Negative. Alpha 12 is occupied. Reroute to Bravo 9.
Confirming new ETA for the navigator.
As you can see, the vessels are maintaining their schedule from Fujairah.
Very good. The continuity of supply is paramount.
Strategic reliability is built from repeatable drills, not from one heroic inauguration.
Convoy lead to base. We are approaching the remote valve site.
Roger that. Keep following the service road.
The bypass infrastructure is clearly having a stabilizing effect.
It won't stop the panic entirely, but it's softening the immediate shock to the system.
A strategic bypass only matters if upstream supply remains integrated and uninterrupted.
Close that valve now. Pressure's dropping fast.
Almost there. Confirmed isolation at 1500 hours.
The bypass helped elevate Fujairah beyond a terminal into a global energy node.